still do that.
Yeah, there'll be somebody walking around and saying, anybody on this
Yeah.
flight, you know?
I don't know. I flew so much for work that I have no interest in getting on a plane anytime
Yeah,
soon.
yeah,
I can't drive there.
And it was just
My folks are gone, and
yeah,
so
same.
no place to travel to anyway.
Yes.
Okay. Melissa, are we ready?
All right. All right, the time is 6:01, and I'm calling to order a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Sunset Valley, Texas for Tuesday, December 19th, 2023. All right, Council, this is our last meeting of the year before we go on a nice holiday break. And, woohoo. We're going to open with public comments, and I think, Councilman Rosengarten, did you want to introduce the new budget finance, well, the soon-to-be new budget finance one?
Punim, if you'd like to stand up and introduce yourself and a little background.
Good evening, everyone, and it's truly a privilege to be here, to be a part of the City Council. My name is Poonam Sidhu. We live at 790 Oakdale Drive. My son worked with Google, and he's also a creator, and I'm kind of staying with him. I retired from the Indian IRS after 36 years, and so I'm pretty much free, which is why I volunteered for the council. I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, any other members of the public that wish to speak at this time, can you please stand and go to the podium? And council, as a reminder, we did have 3 comments in open town hall. That was all for this. I think one of them was for the agenda item number 13. So, all right, if nobody else is going to speak for public comments, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is council consideration of agenda items for approval on consent. Councilmember Rosengarten?
I move to approve on consent agenda items number 4, number 5, number 6, number 8, and number 11.
All right, so the motion is to approve on consent items number 4, 5, 6, 8, and 11. Does anybody want to pull one of those items? Is there a second for that motion?
second.
All right. All those in favor of approving on consent items 4, 5, 6, 8, and 11, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, we approved on consent. Number 4, the approval of the minutes from the November 14th, 2023 meeting and November 28th, 2023 work session. Item number 5, appointment of Poonam Sidhu as a regular member to the Budget and Finance Committee for the term ending September 30th, 2024. And thank you very much for volunteering for the service and filling out our Budget and Finance. Item number 6, approval of the July, August, and September 2023 financial statements as recommended by the Budget and Finance Committee. Item number 8, approval of an agreement with Sustainable Food Center for Hotel Occupancy Tax Fund grant in an amount not to exceed $24,500. And item number 11, approval of the destruction/recycling for outdated computer and IT equipment assets and the auctioning of various outdated public works vehicles and equipment under section 37.04 of the city's codes of ordinances. And if council remember that a little while ago we moved to an online system for those auctions versus having the previous system where I think it was a sign up in person. So if anybody's interested in the equipment that's being put up, you can go to the city website for that information, I believe. All right, so council, that'll take us to our next agenda item. And also as a reminder, we do have a time certain item at 7 o'clock for a public hearing. So if we get through our agenda items before, then we may take up items that are after that 7 o'clock time certain item. But we'll go to item number 7. Consider an act on approval of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 budget amendment number 7, for various expenditures and transfers, including the fiscal year 2020 through 2021 utility subsidy, CIP, and city facilities projects, salaries, and other expenses. And City Administrator, do you want to go ahead and introduce this item, and we can open it up for questions from the council?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. So this is this will be the final budget amendment or budget adjustment for fiscal year 2023, which we are wrapping up, closing out the books for. You all just approved the last quarter financial statements for the year. So this is allowing us to reconcile all the various accounts to prepare for the fiscal year 2023 audit, which will begin as soon as we have completed the fiscal year 2022 audit, which I just checked in with Kyle that we are hopefully going to be wrapping that up shortly. Again, just as a reminder, once the 22 audit is complete, that will be our final audit with Haney and Company. And then once we begin the fiscal year 2023 audit, we will be with our new auditors. So this final budget amendment takes into account, let me see, I'm going to go straight to the amendment here. So the first items up here, they're all operating transfers. There was the fiscal year 21 utility subsidy actually never occurred in fiscal year 21. This is the operating subsidy for the utility fund. And so just in reconciling our accounts and fund balances, Kyle realized that never occurred in FY21, so we need to reconcile that. And so what that does is just take money from the general fund and move it into the utility fund. And additionally, this $85,000 here was the remaining balance in the actual city facilities fund. When we started the city facilities project, we created a city facilities fund and we opened a tax pool account. Since that project is pretty much complete, I know there are some lingering issues just with the pond and getting the final payouts to the contractor. We still wanted to just close out that fund, close out that account, and so we needed to transfer that money from that account into the general fund, into the committed funds for the city facilities. The salaries line item, there was $46,000 over salaries in the Public Works Department within the general fund. All of the other funds and departments related to Public Works, water, wastewater, solid waste, streets, venue, and drainage all had enough money to cover that $46,000. So it's just, again, council has to approve any transfer of funds between inter-departments. So that's why you all are approving that line item. The same thing happened with the workers' compensation benefits. Art Fest, this item we're actually pulling from the hot fund balance, although overall Art Fest was in the positive. If you look at all the expenses and all the revenues for Art Fest, it came out in the positive. However, all the revenue that was received that wasn't from the hot funds had to be booked in the general fund because it was from sponsorships, booth revenue, and t-shirt sales. So to avoid this in the future, we have now changed how we're doing the accounting for Art Fest moving forward. There will just be one transfer from the hot fund to the general fund, and then now all of the expenses for Art Fest will be in the general fund. So there was also the loss due to fraud, the $29,000 for the altered check and the spearfishing incidents. You all were given memos for both of those. Thankfully, the $17,000, which was the altered check incident, has been recouped, but we received that check a month ago, so we'll be booking that in this current fiscal year. And then all of the other items, from digital mapping all the way down to Lone Oak waterline improvements, are all CIP projects, and they all required carryover from budgeted fiscal year 22 expenses, because these were all projects that we've been working on and paid into during fiscal year 23. So any questions about any of these? Because this is what you all are actually taking action on. All of the rest of these pages we are just staff, according to the financial policies, we have to report these to council. You're not actually approving them. They were all under the threshold that the mayor and I could approve. And all of these stay within the same department. All of these adjustments stay within the same department. Yes.
Because I had questions. I wanted to make sure I understood it before I approved anything, and so that's why I did the worksheets that I did and the notes that I did on mine. I don't know if everybody saw that. But like, for instance, if you go to the first one, underneath the, there, okay. So the first 6 salaries, if you look over a budget pulled from, you see, this is a unique way of presenting the information. I've never seen it presented this way before. Doesn't mean it's a bad way, it's just a new way. And so we have 6 salaries over to the right under budget pulled from, and you see 6 times that there's a budget amount, but the actuals never change. You start wondering, what is this? Well, what it actually is, if you go to the left, you pull that proposed increase off of that budget amount, and you're decreasing the budget amount. So each time you see the item listed again, it's actually one line item, just posted 6 times with math being done, subtracting where they're what they're pulling from each item. Did that explain it? Like, for instance, at the bottom of my notes, I have, the very first one is $494,025. Then to the left, the proposed increase is $1,053.20. You take that from the 494, and you end up with the second line item, which is 492. So once I understood it, I was fine with it. It's just a matter of, when I do an Excel spreadsheet and I send it to someone else, they don't understand it either. It's actually the person who did the work who understands it. So thank you for your time.
Council, any other questions for staff on this agenda item? Councilmember Young, or Mayor Pro Tem Young.
Just one to make sure I fully understand this. Other than the losses from fraud, every item here is just basically a balancing of the books to make them correct. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. I mean, the one where it's actually pulling from fund balance, besides the loss from fraud, which we've recouped 17K,
Right.
the only thing that's pulling from fund balance is the about $7,500 for the Arts Fest expenses. But we just decided to keep that in the hot fund. The hot fund has a pretty healthy balance, rather than trying to do a transfer from the general fund. So
Right.
those
But
are
we
the
also-
only two actually pulling from fund balance and kind of affecting the city's overall balance.
But we are pulling 585,000 from the general fund into the utilities fund?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
okay. I just wanted to make sure I was clear
Yep.
on that.
Further questions? Councilmember Rosengard?
One more question. Regarding the utility, the general fund 2020-2021 utility fund transfer not happening, we still paid all the bills, and do we pay the bills out of the utility fund or out of the general fund?
So when you say we pay the bills, does that mean expenses within the utility fund?
Very good, yes.
Right, so the utility fund still has a checking account, and the general fund has a checking account. None of our other funds have a checking account. In 2020, 2021, we still had an account with Chase. Now the utility fund is also with Wells Fargo along with general. So yes, so we always had money in that account to pay our bills. It's just the fund balance. I think it was realizing that the utility fund balance was lower than it should be due to that transfer not happening, right?
That's where I was
So,
going with that.
yeah,
I
so-
wanted to make sure we had enough money in the utility fund
Yeah.
to pay all the expenses that were coming in, even though the transfer didn't happen. And I know in the years past, before the city administrator we had for 3 years, we always put money aside for infrastructure future. And then in the last 3 years of a different city administrator, we stopped doing that because her recommendation was we should have all the funds as much as possible in the general fund to run the whole city. So,
Yeah, so, I mean, essentially, this just makes the utility fund balance a little healthier by
absolutely,
adding
totally
that
agree.
money that we didn't transfer back in '21.
Councilmember Rosengard? Oh,
The transfer does the fund balance, so the fund balance that they saw on the September 2023, the end of that statement, so this has not happened yet, so this will change those.
No, it did. We made the transfer already, so
Oh,
that,
we've made the transfer.
it was already reflected in
Okay, so the
balance.
balances already reflect this. This is just officially changing the budget.
Councilmember Rosengart?
I move to approve agenda item number 7, budget amendment number 7.
Mayor Pro Tem seconds. Is there any further discussion on this? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, motion passed. Thank you, staff, and thanks, Cal, for moving that forward. I know it's a big part of getting us ready for the audit, so appreciate that. Council will move on to agenda item number 9, which is consider an act on terminating the contract with Ambassador Services LLC and approval of a non-regular part-time position for janitorial services for the city facilities. And again, this is going to be City Administrator. Do you want to introduce this one, or?
So, Mayor and Council, we are, and we've consulted with legal. Legal has reviewed the agreement, and we have, based on the contractor's performance or lack of performance in response, we are recommending terminating the contract. Staff, discussed, do we go out for RFP again? And the Assistant Public Works Director is in favor, and both myself and Public Works Director support us hiring essentially a non-regular part-time, so they would not be eligible for benefits, but hiring a non-regular part-time individual to perform janitorial services for the city. We would, keep the same days that the current janitor works, which is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but it would, having them be a part of city staff, it would give us more flexibility, if we needed them to come on a different day and clean up after an event, we would have, more of a direct working relationship with this person. City staff would be ordering supplies. That is one service that Ambassador was supposed to be doing and they were not doing. We were having to order the supplies. Anything else to add, Carolyn? There may be times where we have to, if we need to do some intense window cleaning or something, we would hire a contractor for that. But otherwise, there's the normal maintenance of or not maintenance, but cleaning of the city facilities, including City Hall, the back offices here, the police department, the EOC, and all the back offices and rooms, the Public Works building, all of those offices and lobby area, and then also the not the garage, but there's the break room.
Break room in the
Yeah,
garage.
so that would be what this individual would be in charge of cleaning, and they would be managed by the Assistant Public Works Director, by Dakota.
Councilmember Rosengarten?
I have a couple of questions. The first one is, how many months are we into this contract?
It was approved, I believe, in February. I think we probably entered into the contract then in like March kind of time period. And so, yes.
So it's not ending within 1 year contract, so
Yeah.
we might be into 10 months. Do we have someone in mind as the person to hire as a
I mean,
part-time?
there's a couple people, but it'll be an open posting that we would be placing out there.
Are we
So,
planning on hiring someone before we fire the janitorial?
yes.
How long are we keeping the janitorial? To the end of December?
It would be at least, I mean, it would take us probably 6 weeks at least to bring somebody on to staff. So it'd
But-
probably be into January, but at the end of January would be my guess, would be how long it would take.
Here's where I'm going with this. If they hear this and find out that they're being fired, the service may dwindle, just so you know. So if you had someone in mind and was ready to take over once they quit, because that happens.
Yes.
Janitorial supply house, do you have a good source already?
We can order from the same wholesale places we've already been sort of using
Okay.
and whatnot.
'Cause I have
And for the
recommendations.
most part, we've already been having to do this.
Got it.
to
And even
order-
though it's in
to
their
place the
contract
orders.
that they're supposed to be doing this,
Yeah.
okay? And I think there was one more question. The one where in the job description, where it says to wipe off the upholstery in the common areas, that'll never happen, just so you know. So you're best not letting them bid with that included, and just ask, if you notice things, then to ask them to just simply wipe that off.
Yeah, well, it'll be spot clean. And that's one of the, I think, benefits of having somebody part-time in-house is that we can tailor, because right now, the person who is doing the cleaning, we're not technically the boss of. They have a whole slew of bosses above them. So
Yes.
we, you know, so this way
Correct.
we'll have more direct contact and be able to direct a little bit better in this sense.
Two more things. Number one, you understand that if you hire a part-time person who is one person, that when they're on vacation or when they're sick, you're down and out.
Yes.
Okay? The other thing is, and now I lost that train of thought. So if you hire one person, you're at a handicap if they're sick or out. I forgot the other one. I can come back to it if I think about it. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you. So in the time that we've been buying our own supplies, is it just they buy nothing for us, and so you guys have been having to do everything?
Are there significant delays and we're running out of stuff?
Okay.
Yeah.
About how much, so if $1,400 is salary, how much in supplies do we need a month? If you had to guess.
I mean, it's, because that would include not just the actual cleaning supplies, but it would also include the, you know, toilet paper, paper towels, all of the, you know, kind of,
Right.
you know, things that we need in that area.
I'm just trying to figure out what their, what their business model is, because it's like their margin is, and, you know, you're going through the agenda, and I was scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. The document that they had is half of our entire agenda. And to do all that and then to like just have like poor service is just like mind blowing. It's like they have all of that locked down, but they can't do the actual whatever. No, I was just really curious. We will have more flexibility, so even if it was the same price, I'd go for it. But it's just like an odd situation. Maybe we're just too
and
small.
that $1,800 does not include the price of supplies from them. We pay that on top of that. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Let me make that
okay.
clear, yeah. Mhm.
Say that again.
The $1,800, now includes some of the cleaning supplies, like,
Yeah.
you know, like things to use to mop the floor or something like that, but it doesn't include any of the
So
paper
this
products.
is a significant savings for us as
So,
well.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay, very cool. Thank you.
One question, is this a salaried position, or is it a paid
It's
on an
an hourly position.
hourly position?
yes.
Okay, so if we want to have them come in more, we're going to pay a little more.
Yeah, so if we need, so say if we have a big event or something like that, we need them to come in a different day or something like that, we may pay, or if there's or if the cleaning takes longer after a big event, it may
Right,
cost a little bit more.
okay, thank you.
Councilmember Rosengren?
Could this be approved without the job description? Because there are some things in the job description I disagree with that I recommend on revisions. I sent you an email.
Yeah, and there's some different typos and stuff like that, so we will.
Not just that, on the interpersonal communication.
That's just a standard thing that's on all of our job descriptions. It's on every job description.
But if this individual, who is hired as a part-time person, and does janitorial work, it says that they have to be able to communicate with someone from other agencies and the public, and I'm like, no, I don't want other agencies telling them what to do, or the public telling them what to do. That should only be
Right,
one supervisor.
right.
So, to me, it doesn't go there.
Okay. Yeah, and
All the other staff, because I worked on job descriptions with all the other staff and with previous council, Alfonso, and previous city administrator. All of that whole paragraph, yes, was copy and pasted in every single job description. But this is a janitorial part-time person. I don't think this,
and we can easily, we can remove that little part
Okay.
of the sentence right there.
so my question
But
was,
I would leave the public in, because if there's an event or something happening, sometimes we have meetings that are on those off nights. He or she may still be interacting with the public.
okay? So tonight, if someone approved this, are they approving it with the job description as written, or is the job description going to come back again?
If it comes back, it couldn't come back until January 16th, and I don't know how we would hire a person without a job description.
Okay, so you have my ideas, but you don't have the rest of council ideas on the job description. So-
Were there any other ideas?
What was the suggested edit, Councilmember Rosengarten, so we
Can
can
you,
include that?
so easy when I have it on my home screen, but here it's, okay. In interpersonal communications, if you put up the job description, for instance, there was a typo, we got that corrected, and then you come down to interpersonal. So if you don't mind, because it's hard for me to see here, and I can see it on my computer, but says that they would interact with other agencies. No, they work from 6 o'clock at night until 11. There you go, perfect. Co-workers, that would be staff, not co-workers. And then you have two sentences that duplicate. Contacts usually involve, contacts usually involve. So that first one, get rid of it. Yeah, you don't need that at all. Includes the ability to make decisions and make choices between policies. They're not going to be doing any policies. They're not going to make decisions on rules or procedures. All of that's going to be dictated to them. Got it? Language ability, that's all fine. Everything else was fine. It was interpersonal communication. Okay. Yeah, so if you go back to interpersonal communication and let everybody read it and see if they're okay with it. And you can leave in the furniture cleaning, but it's not going to happen, just so you know.
Council, any further edits or proposed edits? Councilmember Johnson.
It's always one of these things where it can almost like go on consent and then we get into it and here we are. High school diploma or GED? You want that? Like, how often does that come up anyway?
How often does it come up?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's been pretty standard that we've had that in the system at this point.
Do you think it's a,
It's up to you guys.
What's that?
oh, just high school diploma? Yeah.
You can take that off.
This is going to be someone who is just grateful to have a job, and sometimes there are people that dropped out of high school.
Further
good?
proposed edits?
I do have some more questions. When you hire an individual, they're not going to have buffers, they're not going to have steam cleaners, but yet we're asking them to clean the floors and the carpet. And so who's buying the equipment?
I don't think any of the flooring we have requires buffers at this
Okay.
point in time.
You have no
And I think
carpet?
we have mops and the wipes or things, and I think we have a vacuum. So I think we have all of that equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have the vacuum. Is it a backpack vacuum or what type of
No,
vacuum?
we have very little carpet left
Okay,
in any of the
good.
buildings. So it's just a normal vacuum.
Okay.
Yeah, we can open up for members of the public to but I'm happy to open up for public comments or your feedback.
Thank you. No, I just said you're going to put in basic literacy there because you have report, in what's required, you have reports. You require them to furnish reports. You need to put in something there,
Right.
basic literacy.
It's a great idea because I have some that don't speak English.
Councilmember Rosengard.
I move to approve agenda item number 9, janitorial services,
With the proposed edits.
with changes made to the job description, yes.
All right, so the motion is to approve terminating the contract with Ambassador Services LLC and approval of a non-regular part-time position for janitorial services for city facilities with edits to the job description as captured in the document that the city administrator had up. Second for that?
I'll second.
Okay, that opens up for discussion. Any further discussion on this item from council? Any other comments from the public? Will certainly take any more, any more feedback. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes. All right. And I'm looking forward to having that flexibility in this role, so I'm glad that we got that approved tonight so that we have that we can post that.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 10, which is consider and act on approval of a task order amendment for the Upper Cougar Creek Savannah Trail / Home Depot Boulevard pedestrian improvement project. And Carolyn, are you going to introduce this one?
Sure, yes. And so I sent out an updated task order this afternoon. So this includes the Upper Cougar Creek Savannah Trail project, plus the pedestrian sidewalk on Home Depot Boulevard right there, which includes kind of updating the turn radiuses into Home Depot Boulevard from Brody. And so this includes taking the project through the bidding and construction phase, and these projects are going to be bid and constructed together as one project. It also includes some of the sub-consultant services that we need to get the project through all of the approvals that we need, including accessibility review and inspection. What we learned from the last CIP project, the one that we're just wrapping up now, is that we didn't have construction materials testing in advance, and so we had to use contingency for that. So the construction materials testing is included in advance this time, so we know how much that is. It includes, the original one had the information in about the traffic, but we went back and we reviewed our contract with the city of Austin, and it looks like back when we got this agreement many years ago, they agreed to do traffic light kind of design and installation for the city. Of course, the city would be paying for that. So that has been what was removed from the original task order that was online. So that was about a $40,000 difference there. So the final compensation is about, with including the all the sub-consultant fees as well, is $110,628.55. That will take Upper Cougar Creek and Home Depot Boulevard through construction. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Councilmember Johnson and then Councilmember Rosengard.
So this is $60,000 more for Upper Cougar Creek?
It is,
This is an amendment, right? So this is more?
oh, sorry, I just closed it by accident. And it's the super small page. Yeah. So Upper Cougar Creek. For 36, amendment number 1 is $45,000 plus the consultant fees, which gives you a total of $59,330.
Sure. So this is more than the number that we had talked about a while ago, which
Which number?
$250,000 for, well, how much is Upper Cougar Creek costing now at this point?
The whole trail to construct?
Yeah.
Oh, it was easily going to be $900,000.
Did we know this?
Yes, that was.
$900,000?
Yes.
I don't think I ever saw that number before.
So
That
yeah,
is-
it is not inexpensive to build a trail nowadays.
Yeah. That's a bummer.
Councilmember Rosengard.
Carolyn, if you'd go into the detail of the questions I asked you earlier today, or I have.
Sure. So you had asked regarding, so kind of following up on what Councilmember Johnson said. So we obviously don't have the construction costs. The estimates for Upper Cougar Creek are easily about $900,000, give or take. And once we get the construction kind of bid out, we'll know exactly how much that is. Easily Home Depot Boulevard is going to be upwards of $500,000. Just a traffic pole alone, one traffic pole is about $100,000. They are not inexpensive items. And so we are, with widening those turn radiuses to make the trucks and make it safer to get onto Home Depot Boulevard, we have to get a traffic signal that has a longer arm and longer reach over the roadway. So those are expensive, pieces. That Home Depot Boulevard is eligible for street funds, so that because it's a sidewalk that's there, it's already part of that system. It will be paid out of the street fund budget. And was there anything else?
You said, let's see, Austin's going to put in the street light, or?
So we'll be working with the city of Austin. Jerry's helping us to arrange a meeting with them so that we can kind of go over the plans for well, not just this, but also for all of Reimagine Brody, to try to, work on different topics and different parts of that discussion that we'll be looking at. But we will be looking at working with the city of Austin, their traffic engineers, to design, and they will eventually install the new traffic light. And those are, we're going to be working with them on Brody and ERW, obviously, for Reimagine Brody. So there's a lot of little pieces of that where we're looking at some different signalization, some different kind of things like that you'll see coming out of Reimagine Brody in hopefully a few weeks.
Can we add another scope of work? Can we
Oh.
put a 3-gang light at the entry of Lovegrass and Brody? Yeah.
No. I
While
know
we're doing
we have
this?
looked at some, and Tom has spent a lot of time kind of trying to figure out ways to address that turn. I mean, we looked at an innovative way to do a half kind of roundabout over there to get you guys out of there, but that's a very expensive endeavor.
I know that's not on the agenda. Sorry, but it's so hard to get out. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands, this is not the construction itself. It is simply the construction design phase, period.
Yes, this gets us through construction and will get us to a built trail once we get through that construction bidding phase.
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So, where did the decision to add these things come from for the Savannah Trail? Did that go through P&E, or how was that decision arrived at?
There was a big public process on doing the Upper Cougar Creek Savannah Trail.
Okay,
Yeah, so it all came through that public process that we went through.
okay. And P&E approved this.
Yeah, multiple meetings, lots of feedback on that.
Okay.
Councilmember Johnson?
Please help. I don't have this bad of a memory. At some point, it was an ADA trail in Upper Cougar Creek, and it was like $250,000.
So, okay, yeah, so,
That
that was before, that was way back in an estimate for a Parks and Open Space Plan. And once once you went from a concept to an actual schematic design, it's a much more expensive endeavor.
Can you explain how we went from $250,000?
And it wasn't 250, it was a little bit more than that.
But it was.
And these
Something
you numbers
to
were
wrap his head
presented.
around.
Oh, yeah, and I thought that was a crazy amount of money for a trail. We have a much longer trail down at the end of Reese that was $40,000. And it was like,
Yeah, but you're looking at different types of construction there. You're looking at a trail that just blazed through the woods and
And
is not ADA compliant at
and
all.
at the time, it was just like, well, it's an ADA trail. I'm like, okay, I guess an ADA trail is $250,000. And now it's like, no, it's going to be $1 million.
So, yeah, so once
Which, I mean, I'm looking at the budget. I saw that budget and I voted for it, but now I'm just like, how in the world did we
yeah,
get to?
and ADA, yeah, so Upper Cougar Creek has a lot of challenges. It's floodplain. So portions of the trail are concrete, portions of the trail are granite gravel, portions of the trail pervious concrete. There's also a section of boardwalk to kind of get through the trees and stuff like that. So it has a lot of topographical challenges that, for example, if we were building on a different space in Sunset Valley, we may not have those challenges. It would be easier to build a trail, ADA trail even an ADA trail on a flat piece of land versus Upper Cougar Creek where we have a lot of topography changes in there. But I think And this includes, yeah, I mean, and the trail includes it includes all the vegetation and landscaping and all of that. That's also part of building something that is a very nice trail system. I'm not sure how much,
And I like trails, but I'm just like gobsmacked.
Yeah.
That's
In the old days, when cattle would just walk and create the trails, and you could just use those trails, well, no longer.
Councilmember Rosegard?
I was going to ask, I was going to mention, Councilmember Johnson, if you remember, the Upper Cougar Creek development schematic with the designs done by Turk was going to be about $5 million, where the $1 million was just the trails, before getting all the other play area, art area, and so on.
So you're saying it's not so bad?
No,
We're saving money.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
remind you, this is where we started, 5 million, and then we thought we'd start at phase 1, which
yeah,
is the
this is
trails.
just phase 1, and it's
Yep.
going to be that much.
With that, I move to approve agenda item number 10, Upper Crooked Creek Savannah Trail.
Is there a second for that, to open up for discussion? Councilmember Burrow? All right. That opens up for discussion. I'm going to open up for the members of the public that wish to speak to this item. Looks like we have one member.
Melissa Gonzalez, 26 Reese. I also have concerns. I did recall the 900,000 number, but it's the engineering pieces of that have been causing me concern for quite a while, in the way the chunks go out. And I feel like, and I have felt, and I have said for a long time, that I don't feel like we have tight enough supervision on a lot of the engineering numbers that we've had going through. And I would really like us to have the engineering numbers go through at least the chair of Public Works, especially as we get to some of these road things, and the percentages that sometimes I see give me pause. And so I've said this for about 3 years now. I continue to say that I think our engineering numbers are high. And so I just would like to see some controls on that. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate all that y'all are doing. And I do appreciate what the Public Works Director is saying about the complexity of this trail. We are trying to create something that is a lot more of Tada than what we have over on Reese. This is something that we want to be very accessible in a very challenging place. And as y'all recall, whenever we have a lot of water, which we're going to have in that trail, we have more expense because we have more concrete and pervious concrete, which isn't even just regular concrete. So I do want to reiterate that there are a lot of complexities to this particular ADA trail. And yes, there'll be engineering, but I just want to make sure we have a handle, more of a curb on some of our costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this, or any other members of the public wish to speak? Another good thing is that about 1/10 of the project cost is for art. So I think we maybe a little bit more than 1/10. I think we got a big budget for art in that $900,000. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay.
Nay.
All right, so the motion passes. All right, council, we have some time before our time certain item. So I would recommend that we go ahead and jump to 13. Yeah, so let's go ahead and move forward to agenda item number 13. Consider and act on approval of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2023-24 budget. This will be budget amendment number 1 for transferring $160,188.97 from committed general funds and authorizing a payment to Chasco Constructors as part of the city's facilities project closeout. And so this may take a bit of an explanation from our staff, but you want to start us off?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. And if we need to drill down too much in the details of the pond and the task order, we may need to wait until after item 12 and move into executive session. But I can just give a really brief overview. As essentially, this is just moving us one step closer to being able to finally close out the city facilities project. This would, we do have enough in the current committed funds for the city facilities to do this next payout to Chasco based on their acceptance of the proposed change order for the pond, which we are trying to, a new tactic to get it permitted and final TCEQ approval, because that is the last remaining item in order to close out this project. So this would just transfer money from committed funds in the general funds to an actual budget line item so we can pay out Chasco. This would not be the final payout. So any questions about this specific? And as you can see here, we haven't received an updated payment application from them showing that we did pay this. So council, you all authorized this back in February to pay this $236,000. So they are showing they are showing that our retainage should still be $360,000, $180.97. So they're asking for $160, $180.97 of that. City's books do show something different. So this is something that the finance manager and I will have to work on. We'll have to go back through all of the payments that have been made to Chasco over the last few years to reconcile everything. There have been additional costs due to the pond and engineering testing, all of that. So, but this would not be the final payout. This would hopefully be the penultimate payment to them. So.
Council, questions on this agenda item? Mayor Pro Tem?
Do we have a rough idea of what we still owe Chasco after this?
I mean, sorry? Yeah, after this payment, according to them, it would be $200,000 minus the change order. So $140,000. But after this payment, according to our books, we're only going to have about $33,000 left. So there's a discrepancy of what, about $105,000.
Okay.
Overall, in discussions with the city engineer, who's probably been reviewing this longer than I have, the actual details. Overall, the project did come in under budget, right? We did not spend as much as we actually budgeted for the city facilities. However, we've spent a lot of time and energy and some money on trying to deal with.
And more engineering and more
ponds, so.
engineering and, yep.
Councilor Johnson?
Move we act on the approval of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 23-24 budget amendment number 1 for transferring $160,180.97.
No,
100. Let me give it what?
we're going into executive session, aren't we? I thought you said
Unless
we were gonna go.
unless there's a need to or not, but we need to go into executive session for this item.
I'm not, the math doesn't work out, and until we sit down and go over the math, or I see an Excel spreadsheet on the math, I'm not ready to approve this.
I'll withdraw it. Can you withdraw it? I don't know.
Nobody seconded it, so if it dies for lack of a second in that
I
case.
didn't even finish it.
Councilor Rosengarten, did you want to go into executive session to discuss this tonight?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, so we'll do that after our time certain item. And I don't know if we have time for either of the last two items before we get into executive session, although we could start taking up the discussion.
If you
Councilor,
want, and you have no problem with it, we could discuss the math right now.
let's go ahead and proceed with that just to
Okay.
see if we can reconcile it.
What I see in the backup, it says that we have 300 and, I'm trying to find it now. 300, I can't get it right to my page that I need. Come on. There's like 360,000 point something in the backup. And then you say that what's left after we pay out 160 is 33. And I know you sent me an email answering my question, but I'm still don't understand that email. So if you take 360,000 and you subtract 160,000,
Right.
that leaves you 200,000 even. But then you also subtract another 61,000.
Which is the their acceptance of the change order proposed by our city engineer.
So is that another change order after tonight? Because what is,
That-
tonight should be 200,000 is left remaining, what I see. And then I see another 61 coming off, and then I see another 33 coming off, and I don't
No.
understand.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, so they're saying that, according to them, our retainage should be 360,180. So after this payment, potential approval of payment, it would just be the flat 200,000. With their acceptance of the change order, that then changes to, 139,000, right? We, according to our books, after this payment, and this budget amendment and payment, we only have 33,563.28 left in the committed funds for the city facility project. So that would leave us with, there's a discrepancy of
You lost me again, man.
105,000. That 105,000 number is 105 plus the 33, our ending fund balance.
But where did these numbers come from? In the backup, okay, and I got all my numbers ready. In the backup, we start at 360,180.97.
Right.
Tonight, we're talking about giving them out 160,180.97. That leaves
Right.
exactly 200 tonight.
Right.
Then where does the 61 and the 33 come from that we're subtracting?
It's in a change order, which I did email to you. We did not put that in the public backup.
It's another change order that came in an email
Yes.
later, today, okay? And these change orders are for what purpose? The 61,000 and then the 33?
For the pond. And so this is, and again, there may still be additional negotiations depending on how our TCEQ permitting process goes, correct? So again, we are not ready for the final payout. We are just, according to them and their books, we still owe, this much money. So proceeding with this payment, it doesn't close everything out, but at least moves us forward. And I believe Chasko is ready to accept the change order, and we can move forward per our last presentation to you during executive session.
So why wouldn't we just cut one dollar amount? Why do we have three separate dollar amounts that we're talking about doing?
The only dollar amount that is being approved tonight is this 160,180.97 cents. That's all we're really discussing tonight. I need time to go through all the numbers to
Okay.
see why there's a discrepancy. That's going to take a long time because
Okay.
this is back when we were
That's
still
where I'm
keeping
at.
paper files. So,
I
I've
want-
got a lot of,
Yeah.
yeah,
I wanted to make sure that tonight, what we're approving is math that works. 360 minus 160 is 200,000. That's all we're approving tonight.
right,
The two change orders, 61 and 33, is another time.
yeah,
Thank you. That's what I needed.
yep.
Do you want to resume where you left off, or do you want to?
I was kind of butchering it anyway, so I'll start from the beginning. Move we act on approval of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget amendment number 1 for transferring $160,180.97 from committed general funds and authorizing payment to Chasko Constructors as part of the city facilities project closeout. I used to be worse at this, if you can believe it.
Is there a second for that motion? Okay. And that opens up for further discussion. And, this has been obviously a long drawn-out process. Staff does need time to make sure that we reconcile and we only pay out what we owe. And that $200,000 is Chasko's number. We think it's less than that. And, I'm hoping that, we can find that that's the case. But we will be revisiting what the final payout number is going to be pending their approval of the change order that we talked about in previous discussions.
And with the pond not working like the scope of work
Right.
dictated, we should be holding some money back.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Okay. So council, we're going to take 5 minutes before we start agenda number 12, which is a time certain item at 7 o'clock for the public hearing. So we will be back here at 7 o'clock for that. All right, we're resuming our regular agenda with agenda item number 12. This is a public hearing to consider possible approval of a request for a special use permit for alcoholic beverages to be sold in a restaurant for on-site or on-premise consumption under section 150.177 of the Land Development Code by the Sunset Valley Texadelphia LLC at 5400 Brody Lane, Suite 320. And Jerry, do you want to give us an introduction to this item?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Jerry Rustoven, Development Services Manager. This item, as the Mayor said, is a special use permit to allow for a what's called a malted beverage and wine permit at Texadelphia over in the Market Fair Shopping Center. The staff does recommend approval of the item with the condition that, of course, the owner obtain approval from TABC, which they cannot do until the council votes. So the Zoning Commission also recommended approval of the item unanimously 4-0 last week. The Zoning Commission did ask me a couple questions that I told them I would answer here because we did not have the answer at that time. One question was the owner, the current applicant, the legal name is Sunset Valley Texadelphia LLC. One of the commissioners asked why there was also a registration for a Texadelphia Sunset Valley LLC with the state, and the answer is that that was the previous owner's LLC name for the same business that has since been purchased by this applicant. I was also asked to make sure, and I did confirm this with the owner, that the franchise agreement that the owner has with the corporation allows for the sale of alcohol. It does. And finally, I was asked on the TABC application, it states a projected food sales amount, projected alcohol sales amount, and other. And I was asked what the other is, and the other is soft drink sales, as opposed to food and alcohol. So, but the commission did approve it 4-0. The owner, Mr. Troy Pigeon, is here, and he would like to make a quick statement, and both he and I are available for any questions.
Good.
Hi.
The green light probably means better than the red one. It's a counter service location, so people are coming in to eat. They're not coming in to like a bar setting. It's not a sports bar. It's not going to be, I don't see a lot of people hanging out and doing a lot of drinking. The other location that I own in Houston is a 5,000 square foot, 28 television sports bar. So I am trained in all the TABC rules and regulations, and all my servers there are certified, and we know how to handle over-serving patrons and the kind of trouble that I can get in as an owner if we do over-serve people. So I really see this location not in that same regard. It really, the beer or wine addition to my menu will just kind of accentuate kind of the sandwich. You know, people want to have a beer or two with their sandwich, maybe a glass of wine. Just want to reassure the council that we are on top of TABC. I've worked in the industry for a while.
Troy, you had a young lady from Houston up managing the Texadelphia here, and I just want you to know she is a fantastic employee.
Good.
She was coming over to our table, making sure everything was perfect.
Okay.
So I just want you to
That's
know.
got to be Vosti.
Yeah, she was fantastic.
Good.
So you've got a great employee.
That's not the only report that I've received. I think Jerry mentioned my day. She's kind of my assistant or nighttime manager, which is really good to hear. Thank you for that. And then my daytime manager's also got some good kudos. So it's good for me. I live in Fulshear, Texas, so I'm a little bit closer to my Houston than I am to this one. But it's good to know that I'm very confident in the staff that I have at this location. So.
Any other questions so we're not taking action until we close the public hearing?
Right.
So this is just for the public hearing portion, then we'll take action after we close the public hearing. Any other questions or members of the public would wish to speak during the public hearing for this agenda item? Councilor Rosengard?
Just out of curiosity, where do you plan on serving the beer? By the way, I don't envision wine with a Philadelphia cheesesteak. But where do you plan on serving the beer? And that's only curiosity, nothing to do with that.
Well, at the, once you come into the restaurant at the counter, we'll probably have it over to the right side by the soft drinks.
Okay.
We haven't really worked out, it's going to be in probably in a cooler. Some people have suggested putting them in those big bins with ice, but when you cool a beer or anything and then uncool it, it loses its flavor, so you kind of waste it by leaving it soaked. So we're just going to refrigerate the beer or wine.
In Germany, they have vending machines where you can get a beer.
Yeah, I've seen those. I've seen those before. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it'll be kind of self-serve, but it'll be close enough for the for my staff to kind of see what
somebody's using. It or not.
You know, and then I'm actually going to be talking with one of my TABC representatives in Houston to see what the best way is for that. We haven't had any kind of theft issues or anything squirrely that has happened at the store, so I don't envision that being a problem. I guess the question is, we haven't decided if we're going to leave it outside to the right by the beverages or if we're going to keep it behind the counter where they ask for it.
I just knew it was a small place, and I
Right.
couldn't envision where would
It
you
is.
put.
I wish
yeah.
I'm actually looking at how I can get more tables in there. Unfortunately, I have neighbors now on either side.
Yeah.
A gelato place is next to me, and then
Nothing but
everything
cakes.
bunt.
Nothing but
Cakes.
cakes is
Oh,
down
those are nuts. We have those all over Houston, and
Oh,
those
yeah.
are so those are two good neighbors to have,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
If someone has a cheesesteak, they're going to go left or right for something sweet. So
Absolutely. Well, I would approve this.
All right, any other questions or comments during the public hearing portion? All right, we'll close the public hearing at 7:11, and that'll open it up for action. Councilmember Oedekis?
I move that we approve the request for a special use permit for alcoholic beverages to be sold in the restaurant for on-premise consumption under section 150.177 of the Land Development Code by Sunset Valley, Texadelphia.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Johnson? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes. Welcome to Sunset Valley.
By the way, I
and-
know of a house for sale in the Meadows.
All right. Council, let's move on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item number 14. Consider an act on approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 94.06 of the city's Code of Ordinances, restraint and confinement of dogs, to expand leash regulations to include residential streets, as recommended by the Planning and Environmental Committee. And staff, do you want to introduce this item and go over it?
Sure. So this is a topic that the city has been kind of going over for years and discussing. And in 2017, there was some expansions of the leash law to include the green spaces, conservation areas throughout the city. This leaves the streets without a leash law, where we have vehicle and other things in the area that are fairly dangerous. And so the Planning and Environmental Committee had recommended to include the dogs be on leash on city streets and ensure that trail entry points have appropriate signage. And looking at that, that did leave several sections of the city that did not have regulations on them. And it creates a patchwork kind of environment of leashed and on-leash areas. And any of the areas that are off-leash are not areas that are fenced or contained in any way, shape, or form. Usually when you have an off-leash area, there's some kind of, defined boundaries, there's some kind of fence, there's something of that nature that helps keep animals and people, enclosed in a space. So we are recommending going ahead and just expanding, and basically it's a citywide leash regulations. And if the city ever wants to consider doing some type of off-leash dog park type area, we can definitely have that discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Carter and let him talk about some of the issues and things that they face, since they are the ones responsible for enforcement.
Good evening, Council. The police department, this issue's actually come up in public safety twice in the past few years. And the police department views this as a public safety issue for both people and dogs. And it just, it's difficult for officers to explain to people, you know, when a dog comes up and either menaces or attempts to play with their dog that's leashed. When an unleashed dog runs up to them and it's unrestrained, it's alarming to people. We like to say that our residential streets allow unleashed dogs, but really they're public streets and they're being used by the public. This really isn't an issue about our residents, dogs being out of control. Our streets are used and our green spaces are used by the public. Many of the incidents in fact, most of the incidents that we go to involve non-residents that are in the city with unrestrained dogs, either in the green belt or on the streets here. And it just, for us, it doesn't make sense to tell someone, the law, it's a good practice not to allow dogs to be unleashed in this part of the city, but in this city it's okay. If the issue is safety for both animals and dogs, then it should be a uniform policy unless you create a fenced area for unrestrained dogs, where you know by going in there you're taking on that liability and that risk voluntarily.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I just want to back up what the chief just said, especially since COVID and since the opening of the Grange Apartments on the upper part of Sunset Trail, we're getting a lot more traffic with people who are walking their dogs. They come down Reese, they come down Sunset Trail, they go down to Valley Creek Park, which is wonderful, and that's fine that people are using this, but there are people who do not leash their dogs, and they are a problem, and that's probably some of the incidents the chief talks about. Having a leash law that the police can enforce for those unfortunate few who do not leash their dogs when their dogs really need to be leashed is important, and I think we should support this.
Councilmember Johnson?
This is a situation where I feel like I do hear people say it's an issue, and then working with Chief, it seems like, well, we'll do like targeted, like, is it always people walking at the same time? I try to find out, to communicate with them, and this is back on the trails, and I don't know, I personally never saw it back on the trails. I also don't see this happen a lot on the streets with kind of aggressive dogs, or not even aggressive dogs, but like dogs that are not under voice command, because I think that's what's in maybe the current rules. So I have a hard time kind of grasping like what the scale of the problem is. Like, I know we have a very good dog, but she has to be on a leash. And so like we know that about our dog, and Chula is a very good dog, but Chula has to be on a leash. So, and I think that's what I see with a lot of owners, is just they understand their own dogs. And so I'm trying to understand, I'm just trying to quantify. I don't know. I don't like what doesn't solve for me is just bringing cohesion across like all of it. Just like, oh, well, we'll take away, it feels weird to call it a right, but we'll just add one more rule just because it's easier. And that doesn't square with me for some reason. So how can you quantify like how many bad owners there are that just bring a dog that cannot be restrained onto?
I will tell you, I mean, I don't know about bad owners, but I will tell you that I know of one dog that's bitten 2 people, including me, and a mailman. And laws are generally meant for those outliers. We all have to kind of suffer because there are outliers out there who won't follow the rules. Your dog, you may know your dog, but you don't know the person who happens to be jogging in the down your street, whose dog is unrestrained. And that's what I mean. Since I've been here, it's often we talk about our dogs here in Sunset Valley, but the majority of the dogs that are unrestrained here in Sunset Valley, they come here in a car and then they're walking around with their dog unrestrained. The ones that we catch in the Greenbelt, most all of them are people that have come from outside of Sunset Valley.
So, are people coming here because of the green space and it's nicer to walk, or because they can walk on the public streets without leashes, or I guess, or both? Yeah.
Really adopted and allowed to run around, and we can't proactively go up to them and say, hey, you need to put that dog on a leash, unless we witness them being out of voice control. And again, I can give you an example. When we have events here, you can, with all the children, strangers out here, you can let your dog run around unleashed on this side, but across the street, you have to have a leash. If a dog bites someone, it's difficult for me to explain why it's okay to have it here, but not across the street. That's what I mean about uniformity. If it's good law, adjacent to the place, then it's good law next to that as well, unless you have some sort of barrier or explanation why you don't need one here. But just because that's how it's always been.
Yeah, do we know what that noise is? No, it doesn't sound like feedback. It sounds mechanical. Okay, sorry, so the this is a question that I've asked more residents of, just because usually I know pretty much how I'm gonna go and kind of get a good sense of it. But this one is one where, again, I walk my dog on leash, and I know how my dog is, and I've never really been bothered by dogs off leash. And so I started hitting up neighbors, and this is completely anecdotal, but like the people that were for were just like, yeah, before that. The people that were against were just like very opposed to it. And so I don't even know what to do with that piece of anecdote.
Matt, can you bring up the map, the current map that was in our backup? Right. So basically, what this shows is the current ordinance, where everything in the light blue is has the leash requirement, and everything in the tan, which is most of the residential except for the villas, has the command only, or it doesn't have a leash requirement. And then we also have the GUI, or the government properties, which is the Upper Creek or Upper Uplands and the City Hall facility. So, and this is again my own experience. Most of my encounters where I have some concerns, and we have a very a dog that needs a leash, and we always are very anxious when we see unleashed dogs, even in the Greenbelt, right? And when they shouldn't be there, we have a leash law there, but they shouldn't be there. And it's one of those situations where our dog gets cited, even if their dog is under voice command, they may not be when they encounter a very excited dog on the other side, and so those things can break sort of the normal training. So I think there's a tension there. In the villas, we haven't had, any issues with being on leash, in the residential areas, just as a neighborhood. We've had this since 2017, I think is when that went into effect. And I think it provides us some security, a sense of comfort, that we don't have to worry about that. But we still get, we still get dogs, coming through, without that. The one question I was going to ask staff, and just in terms of, and Chief, we're leaving this whole space and around this facility without, we're not changing it with this proposed ordinance, is that correct? And so this is not, we're not tackling that at this time?
Yeah.
I thought there was, in the backup, it was saying it's not, like, changing the ordinance for here. Am I missing that? It is, okay, maybe I just misunderstood the backup, okay. So everything in the city would be under the same ordinance, okay. Got it, okay.
I believe the initial that went out had it, like when P&E discussed it, and maybe when the initial backup went out in the draft packet, it still had this area.
Got it, okay.
As off-leash, but based on staff discussion, we were recommending a full, so that this entire map essentially would be blue.
Okay. And we don't have any control over the ETJ as far as this kind of ordinance. That's out of our purview. Okay. Councilmember Medicus?
So, a question on code enforcement and enforcement of our regulations. Are we still taking the track that it'll be complaint-based?
Most of the time it's complaint-based. If we happen to see it, then that comes out, a complaint. We start, like in the Greenbelt area, generally we go out there when we get complaints about it. We don't necessarily look for it. City streets and by the school, we often are proactive about it. But no, you wouldn't expect us if you're on your front porch or in your yard when you're gone to contact you about that, unless there are a few instances in the city where
Well, the reason I ask is because on our street, we have quite a few people that walk their dogs in the morning. It's like a routine in the morning and the evening, and they're not on a leash. And they're little dogs, and, but yet, a former resident was bit on Sunset Trail, I think it was, where some people have a habit of not walking their dog, or they don't have a fenced yard, they just open the door, they let the dog go do its business, and then it comes back eventually. And that's their method of taking care of their dog. I was here the last time this whole issue came up. I was in this chamber and it was a little crazy. And people were talking about voice control, voice command. My profession was animal welfare, 42 years in animal welfare. And I can tell you that I don't believe there's voice command on every single situation. So while some dogs will respond to voice command if things are calm, but squirrel, it's like something happens, you go up to another dog that's, kind of coming at it. So voice command, I just don't think that has any place in our ordinance, personally, after all my years of experience, and several of those as an animal control officer and a cruelty investigator. And so I'm in favor of having dogs on a leash everywhere in the city, because it's the only way to be sure that you're not going to have a conflict. However, at the same token, I don't want to see like us patrolling the streets, and if a couple of our neighbors are out with little tiny dogs that are, at least if people had a leash with them, which we're seeing more people walk on our street too, some with bigger dogs, but most of the folks come with a leash. But we do have a couple dogs on part of our street where, it can be a problem. And we have one person who walks on our street, and she's deathly afraid of dogs. And so she's like, get the dog away from, so just for the safety and everyone being protected, I'm in favor of the leash law for the whole city. So I support Public Works, or P&E's recommendation.
Mayor Pro Tem, and then Councilmember Johnson.
To go along with what Councilmember Medica said, I don't want to see like a draconian enforcement of leash laws, right? And the Sunset Valley PD has better things to do than that. But you do need it for when those incidents, when there's a real problem. And I'll give you an example. I hate to use myself as an example, but a few years ago, I was walking my dogs along Shoal Creek Trail by 34th Street. And a woman on a bike went by with her dog, who obviously was not on a leash. And that dog went and attacked my dogs. I had 2 greyhounds at the time. The leash wrapped around my hand, turned this finger 90 degrees, and broke this finger. And there's nothing I could do about it because there was no leash law there. But you need to be able to enforce that kind of thing when something like that happens.
Yeah.
Councilmember Johnson.
I'll get to that in a second. We have talked about this in public safety, and it's a public safety issue, and public safety was like, meh, and then it just went off the agenda for a while, and then every time it came back, there was never any really, whatever. It's fine. A lot of our committees have cross interests, but the public safety committee just kind of didn't have any interest. And sometimes it's just the makeup of the members of each committee. How would you like a law or an ordinance where it's on the books, but don't have I don't know, it's just like, well, you got to have it on the books, but I mean, like, come on, like, kind of on the books. That's what it feels like we're suggesting. It's like, the chances of a police officer being there when something happens, you know what I mean? It's like you enforce it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I don't think we should ask our police officers, it's like, hey, in the morning and the evening, just don't go down Pillow because you don't want to see what's happening there. And so, I don't know. There's other rules in the city that I feel like we have on the books, and then, I don't know.
That's the nature of having a small town police department, that they have that discretion to know when to put something by statute or by just verbally advising someone. Most of us out here, we don't just walk around a statute book site, or there's a whole myriad of laws that let us into the valley. We use our discretion.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate using your discretion, but I don't know. It's a thin line between,
Well, you bring up a good point, but when you look at the reason that laws and ordinances are created, it's not for the majority. It's for those incidents where a child is killed, mauled to death. Then an ordinance gets created or a law gets passed. It's so that it's there, so you have recourse when there's an issue that you need to take care of that requires enforcement. Children have been mauled by loose dogs and killed, and I've seen it. So, it's like, does that mean everybody who has a dog is going to have a dog that kills someone? No. But if you do have a dog that kills someone, then you have the recourse to follow the legal channels to address that issue. And that actually happened, several cases I was involved in this country where people were not controlling their dogs, and the person who owned the dog was convicted of murder. So, you have to have the laws to do something. But if there's no need to do anything, then those laws, they lay there,
Well,
right?
in that same case, I mean, it's not legal for your dog to kill someone, right? So, I don't know, it's just the chance that, like, how do you know a dog, I don't know, how do you know a dog is capable of doing that until they do it? And it's like, you know, we always let that dog just walk without a leash, and then one day it like snapped. And so that's really hard.
Anything with teeth has a propensity to
Well,
cause
well, right,
damage.
and so then it's just like, not only did your dog kill this person, but you also broke our leash ordinance. Or what, you know, it just, seems like such, I don't know,
I think the chief has something.
yeah.
Not having the law, criminal law in the book, I think it would complicate any kind of civil remedy as well. If I have to prove that my dog wasn't out of the wit's control, that's another issue. There's dogs that jump over fences. They don't know what they can do to keep the dog restrained, but it jumped over the fence. Was it under control? It just complicates it for the civil recovery as well. And if you go on the books, that no, your dog has to be on a leash. Leave things up in the air that really don't have to be in there. This is a common. It's about safety, it's about someone coming in about the freedom of animals and all that. I don't really know about freedom for animals. That's, you know what I mean? That's a different concept.
Yeah.
School and send a dog running into a public road.
Yeah.
It's about safety, and it's about safety everywhere in the city.
Yeah.
About freedom, and, you know, and having patchworks.
Well, and that, one concern I do have is the fact that Austin has a leash law, and we don't. So what does that do? If you're more inclined to walk your dog off leash, then you just come over here. So it's just, maybe we get Austin to repeal theirs, and then, you know.
Councilor Rosengarten, and then I would like to open up for members of the public, since this is a public-facing item.
I understand both sides, and I'm having a tough time with this. I want everybody to be safe, but I also want those dogs that I love in my neighborhood to come run up to me when I'm out walking. I don't have a dog in the whole scheme of things, so, but I also want to be the voice for those people who have a dog that is friendly and that does enjoy running around and greeting all the residents, et cetera. On the other side, I don't want anybody being hurt, you know, so it's very tough.
All right, let's take comments from members of the public who wish to speak to this item.
Melissa Gonzalez, 26 Reese. I was also here when we had the voice control discussion. We had someone on council at the time who was very in favor of the voice control situation, even though there were other people who felt very intimidated by that person's dogs. And so I just want to talk about when people who are talking about this are over 6 feet tall and large and say they never have a problem, they need to come notice people who aren't that, and other people who are also 6 feet plus tall, who get big dogs, who live in the same house as a small person who has to walk these dogs. It's a real challenge. And so when I'm out walking, because someone has a meeting or whatever, it's pretty scary. So I have to have my very large dog belted around me on a 4-foot leash to hope to contain my dog when someone is off leash. And saying, my dog is friendly. I said, yeah, but my dog's reactive. You know, I love your friendly dog, and if I didn't have a dog with me, I'd be a lot more excited about your friendly dog running up to me. But I'm terrified of your friendly dog running up to me because my dog may or may not feel safe. And my dog is attached to me, and I may not be able to hold my dog. If I'm not on a waste pack, it's pretty scary to hold my dog. And she's a good dog. We all know my dog. We all love my dog. She's great. But she's a handful. And I'm, 100+ pounds here, and I'm trying to contain that. And so whenever I see a really large dog or even a really frisky dog running, and sometimes, I'm never sure what dog's going to set my dog off, or squirrel or whatever, or some neighbor who's now pounding on fences that might chase my dog into a street, because people are doing that now. So those are just all things that people need to be aware of when they're sitting there deciding whether or not to have ordinances, because not everybody is as big as those people who are doing the ordinances. And the rest of us who are tiny may still have to contain a large dog. So I thank you for your consideration of people who may not be as large. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that wish to speak to this item?
How would a penalty work, for somebody whose dog went out of control? If you were to introduce a fine or a penalty, would that, encourage people to voluntarily put their dogs on leash? It's just a thought, before introducing something that's,
There's already a penalty of up to $500. There's a base fine in municipal court, and so if an officer, a Sons of Valley police officer, issued a ticket, there's a base fine that a defendant could pay that, or they could, most likely in these situations we see them, plead not guilty and want to work it out with the prosecutor. So depending on the situation, the prosecutor has, range. The fine, according to our ordinances, is not less than $1, not more than $500. So.
So I'll start with, I'm only 5'6", so I absolutely relate as a small guy. However, I don't see the same thing if we adhere to the laws that are on the books.
Introduce yourself and then
Oh,
say
I'm
your
so sorry.
address.
Rob Fletcher. I live in the Meadows, and we have dogs that are off leash in Meadows quite often because we're walking, we're doing that little circle, and they see each other and we go, oh, let them off leash and play together. And they're off leash for a couple minutes. Sometimes we walk our dog without a leash the whole loop. Our dog is on voice command. I've heard a lot of situations, both earlier and once I got here, talking about things that are hard to enforce or specific situations with dogs that are off leash. All of those situations I've heard violate the current law. Unless, of course, the owner was ordering them to bite somebody. Because if the dog is under the owner's control, bad things aren't happening unless the owner tells the dog to do that, right? So I don't see a situation where the current laws that we have are inadequate, especially on residential streets like ours in Sunset Valley Meadows. Chief, I have the greatest respect, and I don't want to make anything harder for your officers. I know they have a hard job already, and there's a little bit of ambiguity there as to whether the person was doing what they were supposed to with the dog. I think in the situations that you mentioned earlier on, there were a couple of situations in the last couple of years, and we mentioned a couple with biting. In those situations, it sounds like the people are absolutely in violation of the law. And I can speak from a legal perspective that if somebody tries to file a civil suit there, the law we have clearly states that that person is liable for their dog's actions. So in the situations where dogs are under control, and Rudy can probably speak to seeing our dog see a squirrel or a deer run by and we tell her no and she stays, you're restricting the people who have dogs who are very well behaved and under control. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from council? Mayor Pro Tem?
I have one for Chief. So I live on Reese Drive, which, if I understand the law correctly, does not have a leash law. So someone can be walking down Reese Drive with their dog off a leash. That dog could attack someone who let's say they're walking their dog on a leash. You cannot give them a fine for having their dog off leash, correct?
We can give them a fine for being out of voice much easier if they just, if they're off the leash in the first place, that's what's easy to explain. You can, you know, if you let your dog in the meadows, if there's dogs that like to meet, you can drop the leash and let your dog walk up with the leash still attached. If that's important to you, the officers are going to respond to calls. So if that's not recorded, that's a problem. But again, it's those dogs that are under voice control, they usually are until another dog comes up. Even if that dog doesn't run out or that good dog, another dog will come up. And we could technically drive around and say, if you tell your dog to come back and it doesn't immediately come back to you, you don't have control of your dog. We don't want to be in a position of determining which dog is obedient, which one isn't. It's just so much easier to recognize that, hey, this dog was leashed, this dog wasn't. And again, you can always drop the leash if you want to let the dogs play in your yard. No officer is going to drive by and write you a citation for that. But let's just say, again, we're thinking residential and what we do as residents here on our street, but these are public streets, and these are public green belts, and you wouldn't want your dog walking with their pit bull or Rottweiler walking up your street without a leash, and just, well, I hope he's under voice control. It sure would be more reassuring to have a dog on a leash, for everybody, tall, short, whatever. I just think it makes a good law, and it's, I mean, again, the events that we have out here, how many would be comfortable with people, several people that they didn't know brought large dogs and just let them roam free where they can. This doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it doesn't. And for those special incidents where dogs know each other on the street, just drop the leash and let them go play.
So if they kept the leash in their hand, but they released the leash from the dog, that would not be acceptable. But if they kept the leash on the dog, just for a little bit, that would be okay. Because most times they don't leave the leash on the dog, they unleash it.
Councilmember Johnson?
I don't know, I can't get the, you know, the people are speeding down Jones like right now. Like right now there's a car that is going over speed limit. And I mean, it happens all day, and I mean, y'all have better, it feels weird. It's like, you got better things to do. Doesn't make it legal, you know, so I don't know. It's just, but there's a lot of people in the city that have a problem with the fact that people just speed along Brody, and people speed on Ernest Robles, and they speed on, and so, I don't know, it feels like we're going to make a new ordinance tonight that is another, like, selectively, I don't know, it's just like, it's almost like an ordinance that is only for non-residents. I mean, that's what it feels like it would become. You know what I mean?
So,
But the fact
Yeah,
that,
would you, because people speed and we don't arrest everybody who speeds, we shouldn't have a speeding law?
Well, no,
That's
but it's
the
just like,
analogous argument to what you're making, Rob.
but I don't know, it's just,
The ordinance is actually becoming more, I think, more simple. Like, if you just look, I mean, because we had to add this really big exception to try to get our patchwork leash, off-leash law. So I think we're simplifying. You can look at it that way.
I
We're
actually-
simplifying the law.
believe it or not, I don't actually have a problem with this. I have a problem with just like selectively like choosing like who gets the law like used again, like on them. It's just like, I don't know you.
We,
Put your
typically
dog
in
on a
Sunset
leash.
Valley,
and
there's
it's
a
just
lot
like,
of things
"Hey,
that
Rob,
we don't,
how's your dog doing?
that we don't drive out looking, oh, are they following every single thing of the land development code? I mean, that would
It's
take
kind of
us
weird though,
all
right?
day.
It's kind of weird though.
Well, but not necessarily. Does that mean if you speed down Jones Road and somebody gets a ticket and you don't, that the law's not good? I mean,
Well, no.
just because not because you can't catch everybody that speeds, right?
But so-
somebody gets caught.
But we know, like, people walk their dogs on at certain times of the day. It's just like a very healthy habit to do. And so we know, we don't always know when people are gonna speed, but it's just like, we do know when people are gonna be breaking this one, you know what I mean? And I get it, it's like, there's some dogs where it's just like, we don't know them, but there's certain, I know who has the 2 little dogs. And it's like, those dogs aren't gonna cause anyone a headache, and it's like,
But what would hurt them to have those little dogs on a leash? Does that hurt anybody?
do you really think that is gonna happen? That leash law is gonna be used against us, that situation? I don't know. I'm happy to just move on also, if we
Mayor Pro
wanna.
Tem.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the 2 little dogs not being on a leash. I'm fine with the dogs playing in the meadows. Chiefs folks have better things to do than to try to enforce that. I worry about the person who comes in here who's got a dangerous dog. Right, you need to have some enforcement for that. That's what the law is intended for.
Councilmember Medicus.
So I think too, like, we have apartment buildings, those folks are coming into our city to walk their dogs. They're used to the city of Austin leash law, which is everywhere except dog parks. So, I mean, we'd be consistent with, across the board, instead of this, okay, you can come into Sunset Valley and you can walk down this street to get to the park or the entrance to the trail, but then when you get to the trail, you have to put a leash on your dog. It makes no sense. It didn't make any sense to me when we passed it the first time with this voice command business, because yes, some people have really well-trained animals that respond to voice command, but the majority of people do not, in my experience of 42 years working in animal welfare. I'm just saying, the well-trained voice command, really strict, the squirrel goes across the street and that dog will stay. I know those dogs, I've seen those dogs, I've worked with those dogs, but they're not the majority of the dogs. Just saying.
I know this is, am I allowed to curse up here? Probably not, but,
You might get a
I-
citation.
Yeah, I just,
But if you're a resident,
I
then
just, I just personally need to like come around on this. I want to ask more people. I mean, I don't know what, it, on its face, it makes sense, but I feel like it also, I mean, if you took out all the pieces and had like no specifics, and it's just like, here's a rule that's going to be selectively, in practice will be selectively kind of like used. What do you think? And I'd be like, that seems like a bad policy. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're just like gonna throw another ordinance on the books that's just like, and I love that our officers have the ability to just like kind of, I don't know. I want more, I personally want more time on thinking about this, but I'm also happy to move on right now.
Councilmember Rosengren.
I move to table this agenda item.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it. I just said it and then she made the motion.
All right.
That's right.
So the motion before us is to table this item. and I think we have to specify a time when it gets tabled towards, till our next meeting or till a future, so I think if you want to include that in the motion.
In February, March.
Okay, so bring it back in either the February or March meetings that we have. So, but that's the motion. That opens up for discussion. If other members support that, then we can, obviously move ahead with tabling it. If we want to take a vote tonight, then we can share that with our votes. Discussion on the motion to table the item?
This is so difficult because the Sphinx right here, I have no idea. It's like, I have no idea what direction this would go. Sorry.
All right, so let's go and take a vote on the motion to table the item until the February, March meetings to schedule for the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
All right, so the motion failed. At this point, we could have another motion that is presented. Mayor Pro Tem?
I would like to make a motion to approve an ordinance amending Chapter 94.06 of the Code of Ordinance to expand leash regulations to include the streets of the city of Sunset Valley.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay. Is there discussion, further discussion on that item? And I appreciate everybody's opinions on this. This is obviously something that we've got a lot of feedback from various, anecdotes, but also direct conversations with residents and the ones that came before the council. I certainly support the chief's desire for this to be a uniform approach and make that still available at their discretion. But I think in the general, what we want to do is have a uniform policy, and we want to encourage people to follow that policy and not be selective about it. So I'm hopeful that we can find the balance there like we do with our other ordinances. And over time, if we do adopt this, that it becomes more of the practice that people get into for, carrying their dogs with a little bit more control. But that's just my feedback. So we'll go ahead and move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay.
Nay. And again, I'm going to say, I understand both sides. I don't want anybody hurt, but I'm going to be the voice for the folks who have dogs that are voice commanded and are wonderful to greet you in the morning. So.
Do you
I'm their
verbally
voice.
abstain or do you just abstain?
All right, so did we?
Drop that
You just,
mic.
drop it and walk away. Did we
I'll
get the votes
confirm with
recorded?
The city secretary that she
Okay,
got
great.
it, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, she got it.
Thank you, council. So the motion passes. We'll move on to agenda number 15. Presentation, discussion, and possible action on the operation TCEQ certification, rules and regulations, and upgrades for the city's storage yard.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Our final agenda item of 2023. Back to the storage yard.
Count out a special session.
Oh, yeah, that's right. God, no. So I believe the last time we discussed this was in July. We began our discussions in June, and then, or actually prior to June, and then Planning and Environmental Committee met after council's initial discussion and had some recommendations. There was a bit of a confusion just trying to work with TCEQ on exactly what our storage yard is, and the Public Works Director and I have determined that essentially we're wanting to operate two separate facilities. We have our composting facility because we actually, collect brush and green waste, and we mulch it on site, which gives mulch for both the city to use and for our residents to use. So it's a great service. It's a great benefit to the city. But that is one notification and process. It's not really a permit because we are a municipality, but it does require us to fill out paperwork and give notice to TCEQ that we are operating a composting facility. The second part of the storage yard, a much smaller part, is a citizens collection facility, and that is where we did receive, feedback from residents to keep that service. So that will be the roll-off dumpster for a lot of different types of waste materials, not construction debris. And then we also want to bring into, and then there's the metal recycling bin. And then finally, we want to bring in a cardboard-specific recycling dumpster that has a, thin spot so that it essentially forces the user to break down the boxes, because as you all saw in the backup, we've had a lot of just unbroken boxes thrown in. So those will be the 3 types of bins for residents to use in our citizens collection facility. And so both of those are two separate TCEQ basically forms to fill out to give notice. We will need to close down the storage yard as we move through the TCEQ. It's not a permitting process, it's just a notification process. Some of the changes, or really the main change when we last discussed this, in July, Public Works Director and I kind of went back and forth, and we just decided with the key cards, with the extra security measures we're putting in place, the extra fencing, the signage, and also the cameras, which our Assistant Public Works Director is working with our contractor so that the cameras will be a part of the same security cameras that all the city uses. Right now, there's a camera out there, but is it on a different system? No, so we have one camera out there now. We're actually able to use it for an incident, but we need to expand. We need a better camera. But the one big change is we're recommending the hours of operation just be daily, not trying to have, Saturday only by appointment. That's going to be actually more difficult for staff. So we want it to be able to be used by residents daily, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But we'll just have those, if we come in on Monday and this, someone's abused the storage yard, we will have to investigate and proceed with enforcement. Another change is we'll need to, between now and January, we originally had illegal dumping that we were going to consider a violation of, I believe it was one of the state codes, whatever the state code for illegal dumping is. I haven't had time to really confer with legal on this, but we think it would be better to codify these rules and regulations within the city's code of ordinances under Chapter 93. And then any violation could be a ordinance violation that could be, enforcement through our police department. I don't think there's really been any other changes. Again, key cards are not to be distributed to non-residents. The resident needs to be the one, with the key card and coming up and opening the gate. Otherwise, if it's during the week, the contractor can sign in. We're still fine with that. But if it's on, the weekend, no handing the cards out. Anything else? These are the new. The new.
Yeah, that one.
So
that one does
so
say-
we need to edit this.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure we catch
this
that.
would need to be edited. This would be taken out, and it would be Monday through. It would be
Every
key
day.
card access is daily, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then, where is it about how many times a year you can use it? So number, is it about the number of use? Oh, the load limit. So rather than trying to limit it to like, oh, you can only have 24 swipes of your card per year, because we understand, sometimes if you're doing a large, let's say we have a freeze or some incident, and you have a lot of brush to clear up, you may, and you may hire a contractor, there may be several loads within that day. So we'll be keeping another thing for staff to keep up with is tracking. But again, as we've discovered, most residents don't use it more than 24 days out of the year. So the limits are, you can use the storage yard 24 days a year, but you're not limited to, within that day, you can have multiple trips to the storage yard. In order to proceed and with the preparation of the TCEQ paperwork, we are proposing shutting down the storage yard beginning January 15th, 2024, with sufficient notice to residents. That would get us through the holidays. We'll want to bring back an ordinance vetted by legal at the January 16th meeting to codify the rules and regulations of the storage yard and enforcement. There are different notices. I believe we may be able to start composting activities sooner than we would the citizens collection activities. just because one is a 30-day notice requirement versus a 90-day notice requirement. And so but Carolyn indicated that while it's closed, we may be able to offer some curbside, because I believe we are bringing that back.
Yes, we should be bringing back curbside purchasing, so we should be able to have that at the, in addition to whatever we get now.
And I think that covers all of the changes. Again, this is not for construction materials or hazardous material of any kind. While the roll-off is closed, essentially, we will, the messaging to residents will be, don't forget you have your 2 free bulk pickups for TDS. So there will be a way to get rid of bulk items while the storage yard is closed.
Councilmember Johnson?
So, we have, I really like this. Just recently, I went over to, I forget what I was either taking brush or, I think it was brush, but someone was throwing out a 10-foot long slide, and they put it like next to the dumpster, which you're not allowed to do anymore. But it was a heck of a find, and I totally loaded that up into my truck, and it's like, this is going with me. So I think a shout, like the kind of like free cycling or whatever, we're members of Buy Nothing Project. It is, I think a lot of people are, and some people have never heard of it. I don't know if this is like, we don't want to turn this into, a gigantic document that no one ever reads because it's too long, but it would be a shame to kind of like lose that. Someone kind of put it there, it's just like, well, throw it away if nobody takes it, but like, I'm sure there's tons of things that are just like, oh, I'll definitely be having this. And so just like a suggestion to like, hey, if you can, give it to somebody else, just a thought. This caught me on the last time we went through this, the no construction materials. I would need to know like what that is. Like if I do like a little patch job in my house, like is leftover drywall construction material? Can it not go in there? And then it makes me think like, what do you do with it? Like if I just go to the dump, will they apply the same rules as this and like look in my trailer and just say like, hey, take those nails out of that wood? Which is like something that is not allowed, which is, I don't know what they're doing with this stuff at the dump. Right.
So there needs to be a line under small little projects, things like that.
Yeah.
That would be what we might see, but when we start to see somebody that is a massive remodel.
If you do a massive remodel, so like like how massive of a remodel does it have to be that it doesn't require a permit? You know what I mean? Because I'm just thinking like if it could be part of the permitting, like every time we've done a big project at our house, our contractor just had a dumpster because it's just easier for them as well to deal with, and we pay for it, so. Right, and that's part of like the. Okay, but like how much could you? This is kind of hypothetical, but like how much could you do to your house that doesn't require well, I'm just wondering like, it's another one of these things enforcing. I don't know, I'm on a kick today, but like, how much could you produce and just be like, well, you should have had a dumpster for that. It's like, well, I was only doing all the drywall in my house.
I mean, if you're doing a lot of cosmetic work, you're not touching any sort of you know,
Yeah.
plumbing, electrical, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of debris, and a lot of times cosmetic, like for like, you're not gonna have a building permit, but, you know, I think this is one of those questions you ask, and you, because again, we're not managing, the city of Central Valley is not saying how much is too much,
Yeah.
but TDS could come out and say, you know, what is all of this doing, and then they charge us.
Yeah.
So, I think it's, if you don't know, then you call the city and ask, and then we can call TDS and ask. But
Yeah.
typically, if you can fit it in your pickup truck, but if you start, we've seen trailers come in.
Yeah.
That's
No,
construction debris.
totally. And
when
I'm
it's
not
on
looking
a
to make this
trailer.
dog leash part two. But I just, but, and I guess in those extreme cases, then we got the camera and we can kind of like, and then this is something where I agree, where it's just like, you know, when you see it, it's just like, that's too much, but like, I get it. Okay, I'm
I
done.
think
Thank you.
we could put in the notice that all free slides need to go to your house and put the address in there. That would,
We also took an old wooden spool. For clarification, was I allowed to take that old wooden spool? Yeah. The kids love it.
Yeah.
I'll bring all three of them in here. You can take it from their.
Councilmember Rosengard?
So, staff, you just modified and said that from now on, it's daily, 7 to 7? And there's no signing anymore? Because previously, we discussed at another meeting that residents would have to sign in order to. Okay, but the residents don't. And the reason you're switching from 30-yard dumpsters to 20-yard is, number one, that people can then get the item into the dumpster, but number two, if everybody follows the rules, we won't have full dumpsters. Because if you decrease the size, you also decrease the amount that can be picked up, and you're not increasing how many times it's picked up. You're simply hoping everybody abides by the rules and that we won't have a mess on the outside of the dumpsters.
Correct. And the research really showed that there were only a few number of key cards that were used. Oh, I mean, we're talking excessive.
Can we
And
get those names?
we also discovered that contractors knew how to get in the yard, you know, without so fixing some of these problems, you know, adding the security. We did, council, you all did approve $40,000 for storage yard improvements. I just checked, we haven't spent any money yet. We have been doing, I believe we're in the process of spending some money.
We started to clear we started to clear like the area for the back perimeter fencing and things of that nature.
Okay. Another question. I know that we do composting in the city garden. I didn't know we were doing composting other than mulching in the. Okay. So we're not going to start allowing waste that is capable of being decomposed by microorganisms, including kitchen waste, poultry waste, garbage. We're not doing that. Okay.
Yeah. So when
Okay.
when we fill out that, yeah, because there's a lot you can check off on that.
Exactly.
We only will check off, or what's it turn on? Gosh, this is I think that's the second one. Here it is.
But yeah, we're just taking yard trimming for brush. We're not taking any kind of accessible.
Yeah, no manure,
Okay.
no oil, meat, fish, grease.
Those all require certain temperatures, degrees, in order to be decomposed.
And next question. Cactus, Johnson grass, weeds, on one line you say they can put it in their green waste, in another line you say it needs to go in the dumpster.
Yeah, we'll fix that. It needs to go in the dumpster.
Got it.
Where's that?
Because that is the mulch that people put on their flower beds.
You're talking when it comes to the city, because TDS also, one of the technicians has told us we could put our weeds in the green waste bin because they heat it.
They have, when they do green waste at TDS, they have massive piles that
kill the weeds, which is still, got it.
Councilmember Medicus?
So I just had two questions. Does TDS have a definition of construction materials, the prohibited materials? Maybe we could put a definition in there of like what really is that? Is that I take down an old fence, or is that, drywall and sinks and all the other stuff? So definition might help. And then I had a question about the time, like 7 to 7, 7 days a week. Are we like gonna lock the gate at 7, or how do we control that?
The key cards can schedule a time frame on them,
They turn off?
so the key card won't be active then.
Okay. Okay.
Let's open up for members of the public to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Melissa Gonzalez, 26 Reese. I just wanted to take this opportunity to profoundly thank staff, because I know they worked through a whole lot of issues on this, and that they really heard resident input, and I think that they've come up with a really excellent solution. And so I wanted to just say, this was tough, and there was a lot of back and forth, and I really think that staff did a superb job with everything that I heard about creating an input. And I think that we may need to modify this at some point, if not, but I actually don't think we're going to have to, because I think that what we finally came down to will take care of it. There may be some enforcement issues, but then there needed to be some enforcement issues anyway. So I think that staff did a superb job of coming up with this, and I'm really, really grateful for that. I think residents can live with this and be happy about it, and I think we're going to have a great, already well-used benefit to the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Rosengarten?
My only concern is we're going to start this in January. That's January, February, March. That's when the growing season is. People are cleaning up their yards, et cetera, and the storage yards is going to be closed.
True, we discussed that, and so we did wait, we were saying January 15th, so that gives us time to push the trees and all those kinds of stuff out in some time. And then in March, we do spring cleaning month, so we have additional stuff that won't work supplies during that time.
Okay.
So hopefully that would offset any kind of issues that would be happening with
Okay.
that. So then the storage yard should be back open at that point, and hopefully we bring the brush back quicker. So.
Yeah, we're hoping that within 30 days, so by mid-February, we can start operating the brush drop-off at least.
Okay.
But maybe not the roll-off. The roll-off maybe wouldn't be there till mid-April.
Other questions? Ready for a motion? Councilmember Rosengarten? Is
I move to approve agenda item number 15.
there a second for that?
Second.
Um,
I had to get my glasses off.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. And since we must end our meetings on a lighter note for the holidays, I'm seeing a fenced area on city property. I'm seeing a leash law. I think there's a dog park in the
No.
future
No.
where all of our
No.
compost and bulk pickup. All right, council, we've run out of agenda items. I'm going to just go ahead and say, let's adjourn at 8:18. Thank you very much. And everybody have a safe and happy holidays and a happy new year.